Hello everyone, Flick here and welcome to a little look/review of the hardback release by Night Models of the DC Universe miniature game. The miniature game has kind of existed as an offshoot of the Batman miniature game for years now, since the first edition of the Batman miniature game I think, so that's going on 3 years. But as far as I'm aware, it has never had an actual release of the rulebook. It's always been available as a free PDF on the Night Models website, and still is, for the record. But this is their start of like a second generation push by releasing this. It's hardback, which is a surprise because like the Batman miniature game rulebook is just a normal paperback. It's a big release. You can get a hero cover, which is this one. There's also a villain cover available. They come with some special edition miniatures, although mine did not arrive, so I'm pursuing it. And it has everything you need, along with the card. Well, it doesn't have everything you need because you need the character cards, but it has most of what you need. It has the basic rules, layouts, etc. You're looking at about 175 pages, no, actually more than that, it's like 190 pages here of very nicely designed, we'll have a better look in a second, but there's a quick skim through. And they do a nice thing that I wish Games Workshop would do, which is you front load the book with all the rules, and then at the back you have the lore, if you want it, and also like the money shots of the like showing off the various miniatures. There's also some, well, they're either new or before my time of collecting these miniatures games, because for instance there's a Cheetah model there's a Joker model I haven't seen before, so these are either re-releases that are coming soon or new releases that are coming soon, and there's a few other examples of that in the book as well. So let's take a little look at it proper. We're going to lay out the rough rules, quick overview, and see what we think. So as we look at the contents here, it's basically worth saying that most skirmish games have similar rule sets, and a skirmish game is any game that you can play with like 5-ish models a team, between 4 and 7 models, let's say. Small scale, Kill Team, the Batman miniature game, that upcoming Marvel one, Infinity, anything that doesn't require like full scale armies like 40k or Age of Sigmar or anything like that. So it's played with smaller teams. Generally that means the games are quicker, there's less to get wrong, that kind of thing. So it goes over the basics of what you need, introduction of what the miniature game is in case you've never played a skirmish game before. It's played on a 3x3 table like the Batman miniature game. Specifically, it's incredibly similar to the Batman miniature game. I love that shot of Swamp Thing. I wish they sold that Swamp Thing model separately. So they go over everything you need. You need the basics, 3x3 table. You don't need d6s, you need d8s. That's one of the significant differences. This game is done mostly on rolling 2d8s for whatever reason. But it's quickly going over that, and then it differentiates the size of models, their classifications. It matters because throwing people is a thing in this game. The other massive thing in this game is that you can pick up buildings and throw them at people, which is very fun sounding. And this is the lowdown of character cards. I have some character cards to the side here. We'll go over that in a second. We'll just finish going over the book. That's a typical play area. If you had the Hall of Justice play area, which I guess they might sell. They sell the Arkham Asylum one, I know that for sure. Then just what the various role types are, like agility, stamina, willpower. Field of vision, same as the Batman miniature game. Power phases, again we'll get into it when we look at a card. And just the same basic phases. You distribute power tokens, you activate models taking turns, you do powers, etc, etc. Then you have kind of like a recap phase, a la Batman. And this is like the minutiae of the rules here now. This is like, how do you climb, how do you walk, how do you jump off a building if you want to. Well, this is the important part as well. This is the falling table, if you get shoved off a building, or if the building you're standing on is thrown by someone, for instance. So yeah, this is all the nitty-gritty stuff. This is the stuff you need to know to play the game. I think it's a lot easier to understand if you have a character card. That's why I'm not going over it here specifically. But it's really nice quality, I'll say that for sure. And this is how the damage types work. There's a lot of unique elements to damage. That's about as complicated as it gets, I would honestly say. What happens if you're knocked out? Similar to Batman again. This is the significant change here to the DC game, and that is scenery. So when you set up a battlefield for a game of the DC miniature game, you essentially assign a type value to all scenery. And it's kind of laid out down here, like street lamps, benches, cars, light aircraft, tanks, it specifies, then city buildings, and then finally like things the size of skyscrapers and castles, which only the strongest of characters can throw. And then it goes into detail about grabbing buildings or scenery, what dictates whether or not you can chuck it. And I don't like this picture down here, honestly. It's showing like the effort of throwing the SWAT van. They could have illustrated that better, it looks tacky. But the gist of it is, when you throw something, you distribute the damage amongst everything in which is caught in the maximum range you can throw it, or choose to throw it, and then it's dished out between them. It doesn't do the same damage to everything. That's the basic look at it. Teams are like in the Batman game. People who fit a theme can get a bonus point, or bonus rolls because they're fitting a theme. Like this is the Justice League. There's a Justice League team card. You can get teams in a PDF on the website. Teams are not included in this, which was a little bit disappointing. These are effects that you get from attacks done to you. And then this is the nitty-gritty that you need to have that isn't on the character cards that we'll look at in a second. These are all the common skills, traits I would call them, and what they do. And honestly, that's basically it. Because after that, it goes into scenarios. There's like 20 scenarios, I think. Some of them are very specific, you need very specific models, but most of them you don't. Like that one's Superman versus Doomsday, this is Brainiac. How many is there? 14? 16? 18? 18. There's 18 scenarios. Plus you can do your own custom ones or just kill each other if you want to as well. Some of them are more complicated than others. And then the rest of the book, as we discussed, is just the lore of like each Justice League character. And a few of the villains as well, if we get to the villain part, which is somewhere. Rogues Gallery, there you go. The various villains, some of which I've not heard of actually. Like the Crime Syndicate, which is basically just evil Justice League. And we already saw the model pack shots at the end as well. Alright, let's take a look at a character card to go along with the rulebook. So here is a typical character card, hopefully in focus. Once you've used the rulebook to learn the basics of the rules, everything you need to use a character is on this card, except it just lists skill names here. So you would have to collate what a skill does by checking the compendium in the rulebook. But again, this is just if you want a nice hardbook copy of the rules. The rules have and will always be available as a free PDF, presumably. So, I mean, the PDF is still there, but the other selling point for this is apparently it applies all the erratas and FAQs that have happened since the game's release. I didn't play the original release, so I can't really talk to those, but apparently that is something that's included in this that is not included in the PDF. The errata is still available, it's just they haven't incorporated it into the base PDF rulebook. But yeah, this is Superman. This is his health, very similar to the Dark Souls miniature game actually. Health along the bottom, as long as you're in the grey, you get a bonus to a stat, he gets more power, which is kind of like what you spend to do everything. You get into this pale area, you're at risk of knocking yourself out in a round. Get into the blue area and you lose a lot of stats, and you have to constantly check whether you get knocked out. Other than that, level is equivalent to reputation, points, whatever you want to call it. Standard typical games are 50 levels, so this Superman takes up a very large chunk of the 50. There's people who are more expensive than that. Darkseid is 25 points, for instance, so that's half of a crew, if you like, gone on one miniature, so there's even less miniatures used in this game in a standard 50 power match, or level match that is, than your standard henchmen fighting each other in Batman. Got all your stats, power, again that's focus, whatever you want to call it. Everything has a cost, like for instance if he wants to super punch, that's 4 power. If he wants to move, he has to spend 1 power, 2 power, or 3 power, depending on how far he wants to go. He has 3 movement counters or 3 distances because he can fly, which gives him a third. But again, you don't have unlimited power, you might want to save some so you can boost your defense as well, so you don't want to burn everything. Then you have affiliation, obviously he's Justice League. Defenses, physical, energy, supernatural, I think it's classed as, and mental, but they also have other weaknesses. Like for instance, in terms of elemental stuff, Superman's obviously weak to kryptonite, so he takes double damage from anything that's kryptonite based. Then you have like color code. It's all color coded and icon based. for the most part. Green ones mean you can just do them as many times as you like, as long as you have the power. Blue is once per activation. Reds are once per game and are usually exceptionally powerful. So he has like a super attack and a super cold breath attack, which does energy plus frost, and pushes and stuns enemies. It's just one example. There's a Ben Affleck Batman, much cheaper because he's weaker in terms of like superheroes fighting each other, but he has actually special powers as well as normal attacks, which have much more in-depth rules, but again, rules are basically written out in full. You only need to check what your skills are. He doesn't have as many. Simple as that. And in general, you'd have 4, maybe 5 to keep track of. They're a little big compared to the Batman one. And again, you just need the rulebook nearby for the skills. So we are going to be doing some trial test runs of a few games of a DC miniature game once the models are painted up. See how we fare, how we like it compared to the Batman game. Definitely going to be chucking buildings at people because that sounds just very fun. Again, you don't need to buy this, you can play for free. Most of the Batman miniatures are compatible. In fact, a lot of them are getting kind of reboxed and released for the DC game, like Justice League Dark, or who else? Oh, just there's a box of like all Batman's villains, and they all have new rules to use in the DC game as well. So I hope you enjoyed this little look. Look out for battle reports for this, coming soon-ish, TM, when it's ready. Hopefully it will convince you to give it a go yourself if you're looking for a new skirmish game based around heroes in the DC universe. But I think Batman's still mostly my thing, but this seems like an interesting change of pace, and a bit more on the superhero-y side rather than just like gangs of henchmen. Hope you enjoyed watching though. Look out for more content coming soon to a channel near you. Thanks for watching, and to start for now.